Change is hard, and that's because it disrupts our comfort zones and triggers the fear of having to confront the unknown. And that's enough to make anybody nervous, especially because change is a non-negotiable part of life. So the question becomes, how do we overcome resistance and make peace with change? It's certainly not by issuing ultimatums. That's not the way forward. Instead, we need to take into consideration the emotional impact of change. This aspect is the most overlooked part by many leaders, yet it is a critical factor of success for any change. Good morning. Let's have coffee. Welcome to the weekly podcast coffee session, and I'm your host, Toto Yende. Today, we're diving in deep into the strategies of successfully navigating change. Whether it's a shift in company culture, a digital transformation, or even a personal career change. In today's episode, we'll explore why change is inevitable, how to manage it effectively, and I'm going to share some tips that you can implement right away. So grab your notepad and that coffee, and let's get started. To kick off, let's address the elephant in the room. Change is hard. Whether it's adopting a new technology, restructuring your organization, or even shifting mindsets, change is met with resistance from everyone. And for one simple reason, right? It disrupts comfort zones. Psychologists say that humans are wired to avoid uncertainty. And we tend to hold on to familiar routines because we feel safe and it's predictable. But in business, staying in your comfort zone can be costly. Just think of Kodak, a company that was so resistant to digital photography that it missed the biggest market opportunity. Change wasn't just hard for Kodak, it was devastating. So, why do we resist change? According to research, it often comes down to fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of losing what you're used to. And as a leader, we need to recognize these fears in the first step to navigating change successfully. So now let's talk about some 3 pillars that I learned in life about change management. And those 3 pillars are simple. They are communication, engagement, and support. Communication is key. We all know that. When leaders don't articulate the way or why behind the change, the why behind the change, employees will tend to fill in the gaps and they will make assumptions. A well-structured communication plan should always address, in my personal experience, these 3 questions. What is the change? Why is it changing? And how it will impact us? It would help to think about different channels to reach out to the people in your organization. This could be, if you're a big corporate, town halls, emails, one-on-one meetings, or even maybe a podcast just like this. So communication is key. Engagement is the next one. Involve your team early in the process. A great strategy is to build a coalition of change champions, employees who buy into the vision and can influence others. Man, they become like the ambassadors, spreading productivity, addressing concerns at the grassroots level in the business. And then lastly, support. People need to feel supported throughout the transition. That could mean by providing training, offering coaching, and even presenting the answers in the right platforms. Building a culture of support that doesn't make your team feel like they're navigating the change alone can go a miles way. So consider that. The 3 pillars of change management, in my experience: communication, engagement, and support. I remember I had a conversation with, I forgot this gentleman's name. But anyway, I had a conversation with this guy, and he was a change management consultant with over 20 years plus of helping organizations transform. And at the time, I asked him to share a story with me with regards to the where he saw effective change management firsthand in his experience. And the story that stuck with me that he shared with me was that he had this one project that was a digital transformation for a mid-sized manufacturing firm. They were busy implementing a new ERP system. And as you can imagine, they were met with resistance. And he says they were met with unbelievable resistance from a lot of the people in the company. And people were just used to the old way of working, and they didn't want to switch. And what made the project successful was when the leadership team committed to transparent communication and continuous engagement. Instead of putting out ultimatums and imposing the change on everybody, they hosted weekly meetings, workshops, created feedback loops, and even a peer-to-peer support system. By the time they had to go live, 90% of the employees in the company were comfortable with the new system, they were working with it, and productivity went sky high. And I was like, wow, that is just an incredible story. I mean, if you work in the same type of industry, which we work in, that is an incredible story. But what stood out to me from that story was the sense of ownership that made a big difference. The sense of ownership by the leadership team that made a big difference. And I asked him after the story, I said to him, hey man, before we finish, what do you believe the biggest mistake a lot of organizations make when they're trying to go through change? And he said the following words to me. He said, the biggest mistake is underestimating the emotional impact of change. Leaders and bosses in organization focus a lot of the effort on the technical side of a project, which is normally, as we know, the what and how, but they forget the who. Change affects people, friends. Let me say this again. Change affects people. And most importantly, that we need to recognize is that change affects people on a personal level. Addressing this is key to the transformation of the change. So let me wrap up by probably sharing a few tips that I've learned, obviously, in my years of experience of implementing a number of systems across different organizations. So let me share a few of actionable tips that can actually help you with implementing change. Step number 1, create a vision. Start by clearly defining the vision. What will the success look like? Paint a picture of a future that is compelling, however easy to understand. Number 2, break down the change into small wins. Break down the change into small wins. Large-scale changes can be overwhelming. Break it down into smaller pieces. Manage these phases and celebrate each milestone. This will build momentum. That is the secret. This will build momentum. Number 3, listen more than you talk. People need to feel heard. Hold feedback sessions, encourage dialogue, and really listen to what's being said, both verbally and, my favorite, non-verbally. Look at how people are receiving the change. Number 4, model the behavior you want to see. Be the role model, friends. If you want your team to embrace the change, show them what that change looks like. Your behavior will set the tone for the entire organization or the team. These are some really good coffee sessions we're having lately. So let's wrap up today's episode in navigating change. Remember, change is inevitable, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming. With a clear communication, engagement, and support, you can turn resistance into resilience, ultimately into opportunity. Friends, if you found today's episode helpful, please don't forget to subscribe. Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you, and share it, so that we can grow our network. Until next time, I am Toto Yende. Keep navigating, keep adapting, and keep growing. Good morning. Let's have coffee.